If you have a question that you need to ask him, feel free to send him an email, but we hope that you get all of your questions answered during this session. Without further ado, Mr. Rodriguez, feel free to take over.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Gabriel Rodriguez. I am the Senior Compliance Officer, the Unit of Compliance, Department of Procurement Services. Welcome. We're going to be talking today about honoring obligations to the City of Chicago taxpayers. What the Department of Procurement Services Compliance Unit does is mainly focuses on reviewing the bids, the proposal compliance plan. We're going to go in detail up to what each one of these represent or what do they mean. We monitor the MW and the DBE commitments. We monitor equal employment opportunities, also known as EEO, minority and female commitments. Monitor the CRO, which stands for Chicago Residence Ordinance, the local residency requirement. We perform the contract closeout once all the work is completed. How do we do it, or what tools do we able ourselves with to do it? We use web-based systems called Certification and Compliance System, also known as the C2, thus Certification Compliance C2. The Certified Payroll Processing System called LCP Tracker. We conduct audits. We also conduct site visits. When a bid is being put together, one of the schedules that we receive when we're doing the compliance plan review is one is the Schedule B, that is in case the bidder is joint venture. It could be an M, W, or D. So we get the affidavit of the joint venture. That joint venture is reviewed by the Department of, by our legal unit within the Department of Procurement Services. We also get their Schedule Cs. The Schedule Cs is also known as the letter of intent. What that means is the letter of intent that the sub, that means the participating firm, is going to complete and is going to submit. We're going to see a picture of a mock of what the Schedule C looks like, telling the prime, I will be doing X type of work for this amount of money or for this billing rate, and I'm going to sign it. And that is a letter of intent. That's kind of like an engagement that you are going to be doing some work. That is Schedule C is completed by the sub alone. Of course, after negotiation has been taking place between the sub, that could be an M, W, or a D, and now a V for matter of that we have the veteran certifications, and or a supplier. Then once they are all completed, the prime takes the responsibility to complete what we call the Schedule D. Mind you, after each one of these letters, there is a hyphen and a sequence of numbers. Those numbers represent the type of contract that you are entering into. If it is plain without any dashes, that's construction. If it has a dash one, it's a professional services. It could have a dash two. It could have a dash three. That could be for target market, or it could be for um, DBE or for veterans. So the Schedule D is a compilation completed by the prime of all of the vendors, all of the participating minority, female, WBEs, and DBEs and VBEs that will be making up the pool of vendors that are going to be used to accomplish the goal of the contract. The Schedule H, that is the schedule that is completed to document good faith efforts, just in case the vendor cannot find a participating, suitable, willing, and able firm to complete XYZ part of the scope of work. One of the steps that we take in the review of the compliance plan is the pre-award. That is, what is the proper compliance plan and what is it made out of? One is the Schedule D, MWDBE compliance plan. As we just spoke about here in this slide, it is the plan. It's called compliance because that means I, Gabriel Rodriguez Construction Company, going to be using these 5 companies at this percentage, and I'm going to say I am committing, because that's what it is called, a commitment, to fulfill the goal of the contract by making these percentages by those firms. Documentation of good faith efforts in case I cannot, after I have exhausted all possible ways, interact with many people, email all of the possible vendors that can fulfill a requirement, that I cannot meet that goal, that I cannot meet that line item or that required trait, I document the good faith efforts. And if anything, the good faith efforts could be partial, it could be complete, and if they are not attainable because you have exhausted all possible ways to communicate with the vendor community and you couldn't find anybody suitable, you can ask for a full or partial waiver of the contract goals. All of this is pre-award. Some of these are done by in conjunction with the prime. Some of those are done before anything gets done and is done by the user department. What kind of documentation is submitted and is acceptable when you put your bid together and you submit your compliance plan? Schedule Cs. What do we look for when we review in a Schedule C? The project name normally is when the bid is released and the prime is putting the bid together, they normally make a reference to the project name. The project name has to be spelled out completely. Why? Because there's so many projects that bear the same name, just with a very slight variation, but we don't like to confuse nothing or anybody. Mind you, we always like to keep everything tight and organized. A specification number. Every project before an award is referenced by what we call a spec number. It always has to be precise, no letters or numbers missing, so it's properly referred to, and it's easy to call out, hey, the spec number is missing XYZ. The work and or the service is clearly described. Let me see if I can move forward. Okay, this is in a Schedule C. First that we can see is project name specification number identified. I want you to please look at the top. It says project name specification number. Most of these are, you can type in or you can do fill in included text box, which will be sized so you can have all the information that is needed there. The from, that is who is doing it. This is for a construction project. That could be either the electrician, that could be the supplier, that could be the waterman, that could be whoever is it that you are retaining to do services on a project. Who is it to? That's me, the prime. I am the one completing it. Then it says the second bullet, work annual service clearly described. And it says, the undersigned is prepared to perform the following services in connection with the above project, blah, blah, blah. In here, you are going to describe, please do not use 2 words, because anything, any Schedule C that has a 2-word description, electrical contractor, that's not sufficient. What are you going to be doing? It has to be more specific, and whatever you are typing, it has to be related to whatever the area specialty that you hold on your certification, okay? Dollar amounts. The dollar amount that is listed here, let me see, right where it says subtotal, the total are 100% because services, labor are 100%. Suppliers are at a 60% credit. So the Schedule C is going to have a line that says total at a 60%. There it is, the third line says total at a 60% if the undersigned is performing as a regular dealer or a supplier or wholesaler. That is a credit is at a 60%. The amount that is here has to match the Schedule D. The date of when the Schedule C was signed, it has to be, we will be checking to see if it was done after or before the bid opening. Certification letters. Mind you, we're speaking of what documents need to be provided with the compliance plan. The certification letters, if you are self-performing as a prime, or if you have the performing subs, the letter has to come from a certifying agency, number one, Metra, CTA, Cook County, City of Chicago. The name on the certification letter needs to match the name that is on the Schedule C. It has to be current. It cannot be, some firms like to give a letter when you complete an unchanged affidavit. Sometimes it says we have reviewed and we have filed your unchanged affidavit. Thank you very much. That that's not sufficient because it needs to say you are an MBE, WB, or DBE, what NICS codes and what area of specialty you are certified on, and what is the length or what is the period of your letter of the certification. So we need to have that. Normally, those codes are towards the bottom of the page or the middle of the page of the letter. Um, and when we're doing that assessment, we make sure that whatever is on the Schedule C, it ties to what area specialty that firm has or is being certified on. Quotes and proposals. When you are specifying the prices, it is ideal for us to review and assess the proposals that are submitted along with or that supposedly have already been reviewed by the prime and they're being agreed on. That could be the price, the quantities, and the description of the item, so that we are kind of looking at the same things. If there's any deviations that we happen to see that there's a little misunderstanding or there's no clarity on the items, then we request to see any communications or negotiations just in case the numbers don't tie down. And then that everything has been confirmed, and that will be by the signature. What are some of the common mistakes that we see when we're reviewing a compliance plan? When this happens, we always have to send things back for them to be corrected. One is the incomplete brief description of work. 2 words don't cut it. It has to be explicit. Of course, you don't have to put the entire scope of work if it is a very voluminous scope of work, but a very good summary that any reader can say, okay, this is what they're going to be performing. If there is a mentor-protege agreement between the prime and the sub, that question needs to be answered. Do not leave that unanswered because that will not only that will carry a credit to the prime, but it will cause for us to have to send it back to the prime for that question to be answered. Subcontracting levels. If you happen to be, if you have a vendor or one of the subs that is going to be for XYZ reason, it could be because materials or it could be because they already have a lot of projects on the plate and they do need to subcontract a portion of it, but it's not being labeled or marked, or that section is not completed, it will also be sent back to you for so it gets completed, because we need to make sure that either all credit is given to that sub or portion of it and know who the other portion of that contract is going to. Supplier participation has to be recognized, but the prime sometimes they don't read the special conditions where it says that you are only going to get 60% credit for the amount. For every dollar that you paid out, you only get 60 cents. So This is the Schedule C that goes out with the construction projects. It's a little bit different for the professional services, but it's kind of the same format. Who the who the what the name of the project is, the specification number, who is it coming from? Mind you, all of this is supposed to be prepared by the sub. Each sub has to do its own Schedule C. Once all the nuances and all the prices and everything has been negotiated with the prime. The pay item construction projects do have pay items associated with almost every line item, so they have to be included, uh, unit price and the quantities and the totals. Then the bottom, the signatures. In case there's any partials, they go up on the top. Towards the middle of the page is the subcontracting level that we were talking about. That is where if it's 0% on both lines, I mean, whatever amount you are claiming, if you are at 100%, 100% of that amount should match what is on the Schedule D. If you are giving some of that out or subcontract some of that work out to somebody else, then you are not going to get the full price on this page because some of that work is going to be performed by somebody else. So that's where those percentages will be listed. Then the last yellow lighted text is whether or not there is there's a mentor project agreement in place. All all of the mentor project agreements must be approved by the city of Chicago for the specific project. Now, when we are reviewing um, the Schedule C, we also, and after the tenure of the contract, we also have during the tenure of the contract, we like to see if each participating firm and any self-performing prime is actually doing or performing what we call a commercial useful function, or CUF or CUF. What does that mean? That means that each given vendor will be performing work with his own resources. That means that I'm not going to be borrowing employees from somebody to do the work. It has to be with my own people. I will be managing on site my own people, own workload, my own supplies, my own materials, and I'm supervising the entire project and my own crew. It has to be, if it is me, Gabriel Rodriguez Construction, I cannot have anybody call Jackie and Bulls Construction on my side with their uniform, because then what was I retained for? Why did I sign on a Schedule C that I was going to be performing when somebody else is doing the work? That is a violation of what we call the commercially useful function. So that means you are not doing what you were retained to do. Counting participation. When the contract is ongoing and people, the prime pays the sub, depending on the area of specialty, you can have electricians doing landscaping. Okay, you could care, but that's not going to give you no credit because that's not what they were retained to do. So you make sure that whatever you are reporting into the C2 system for payment is whatever was part of the scope of work for which you submitted the Schedule C that ties to the certification letter. Now, how do we count those credits? If I am MWD and I'm performing the work, meaning I'm a self-performing certified firm on that area specialty that I said that I was going to be performing, I'll be getting 100% of the credit. If I am the one who is manufacturing the product or my sub is manufacturing the product, that is a 100% credit because I need to go and get the materials. I need to put the labor in to get the work done and deliver a product. I'm manufacturing, so I will get a 400% credit. Or the sub that is a manufacturer will get 100%. If I am a supplier or if any of my subs are a supplier, they get a 60% credit for every dollar spent. Now, contract is awarded. Now monitoring starts. This monitoring is not only done by us as the monitoring unit, but also by the user department. What do we start monitoring on? We make sure that the goals of the contract, those being MWD or now V for the veterans, the participation is totally being reported, is counted, making sure the contract goals are on track. We will reach out to the prime or to the subs in case there is the contracts are trending a little too low. We also monitor for the EEO. When the contracts are executed, the prime commits to meeting the goals for the EEO. They commit to specific percentages on each one of the different categories for the EEO. We also monitor compliance for the CRO Chicago Residence Ordinance. That's a 50% for all hours worked. Then the local residency. Some of the projects have 7.5%. That's the total hours. A specific number of hours have to be done by project residents only where the project is being held at. All of that is between us and the user department. What does the C2 system do? Not only it is a system that is utilized for when the certified firms go through to renew their applications, submit the non-change affidavit, and the opposite corner to that is the prime, the payment system for the contracts. So, and that's a whole different class that we have, which is the payment system. So what does the C2 system do for us and for the user department and for the prime and for the sub? It tracks, verifies, and trends. How that each one of those categories work? It tracks the payments. Number one, it tracks the payment from the city to the prime. It tracks the payments from the prime to each one of the certified participating MWD and now VBE firms. It's a whole cycle. It happens at the beginning of the month from the city to the prime, and then there's a period of time that is allowed for the prime to now report the payments to the subs. We validate, we monitor that if a payment has been entered or has been reported from the city to the prime, then the subs have been properly paid. We monitor, we track all of that. We verify. What would you verify? Every time the prime gets a payment, they are required to report the payments for the firms that participated during that month or the prior month's work. So we verify. Why? Because each sub is required to go and validate that those amounts are in truth and indeed valid, correct, and accurate, and that they match their own accounting records, and they did receive the money is in the bank account. So once they confirm, that means it's been verified. That is when the credits start accumulated. Dollar paid, dollar confirmed is a credit earned. Trending. That trending happens when we review a contract, and if the goal is 10%, now it's 25 and 5. And if, well, those goals depends on the contract type. If the contract is trending 20 and 3.5, then it's the area of concern. Now we need to start working with the prime because they need to bring the contract current. We need to bring the contract up, make sure that the contract goals are trending at or above the goals. Sometimes, if it is required, we will issue what we call a non-meeting goal letter. That's what that stands for. Hey, mister, you're not reporting or you're not utilizing yourself as you should, so now you're trending below. Now you need to provide us a corrective action plan, how you intend to bring the contract current. The payroll system. This is web-based system that is fully automated. Once you sign up for a construction contract, because those are the only contracts that go into the LCP tracker system is construction. Um, it is intended by the prime for the prime to allocate all of the subs, and then for the subs to start entering, uploading all of the payrolls. These payrolls are supposed to be able, based on the format that is designed, to track all of the different categories of the contract. That means the EEO, that will be journey workers, laborers, and apprentices. The CRO requirements by address, because the cities, the addresses that are entered into the database, they're validated against the USPS to make sure that it's a valid address. And also to make sure that the employee is within the areas, the project area that are required to be, that they're required to be in. All of the data that is entered and all of the wages are validated. They're they're current. Um, they meet all of the requirements. The vendor is in charge of updating those tables. As the subs are entering the payrolls into the system, in case there's rules of what we call rules of payroll, that you cannot exceed the 40 hours. If you do, it has to be overtime. And if those numbers don't match, the prime will get a notification. Hello, there's something here that you need to look at. There's a description of to where the error is, so they have to go and make the correction. All the classifications have been taken from the Department of Labor, and all of the wages are also from either the state or the federal government, as well as the local unions for all of the different crafts. As part of our team, since we are mostly in the office, we need eyes and ears out on the field. And I don't know if the ones that are participating here in this class today have been a prime or a sub on a contract. Perhaps you have been visited by our field analyst. They are our eyes and ears outside their extension. They are doing site visits to make sure that what? That whoever is on site is supposed to be on site. They carry an iPad so they can log in into the LCP tracker and see who is supposed to be on site and what are they supposed to be doing. So they will be doing interviews to make sure that you are getting paid what is supposed to be getting paid for that position, and that you are supposed to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. If you are a landscaper, you are not supposed to be up in a pole changing the light bulbs. We also have one analyst for the certification unit. And what they do is basically they go out and they check, they do the site visits to make sure that whatever you claim on your application is actually there where it's supposed to be. Site visits, now that we are mostly full enforced, well, even because of the COVID, we still were enforced, but they are more out because there's more construction sites available for them to go and see and visit. They have to go and make sure that all of the inspection reports are up, that they are being filed, that they are in the area that they are supposed to be doing. They check that all contractors that are there are supposed to be there. They do eyesight and eye check that all of the on-site, whoever is on site for gender, race, and trade to make sure that they are where they are supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing. Employee interviews. Normally that is so that we can validate that whoever was there is an actual employee of that vendor based on the data that has been entered into the LCP tracker. The job board review. They have to make sure that As in every office, they have all of the different boards, state, federal board that they're all up and they are visible. Even though they are on set and they're on the street, there have to be a place where all those posters are up and available, and they have to be current. The commercial useful function, we just went through that. Uh, Make sure that all of those the different areas of the commercial useful function is being um, done, um, and there is always somebody, a manager on site. So now we did the pre-award, we did the compliance plan review, the award, the contract was awarded. We went through the life cycle of the contract. Now the contract is done. You got your final payment. You and the user department agreed on the final quantities, meaning that's the name that is given. That means this is the total that was paid out to you. And then that amount that you have agreed to, not the sub, the prime, comes to us and said, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Compliance Unit, it's time for you to close this contract out. So we receive final quantities. Then we start compiling waivers. They could be either partial or full waivers. Partial is because there's always a payment missing, or that's the only format that was available at the time that the final payment was received. Normally, these waivers are cumulative, so whatever is on that um, waiver, that's the amount that has been received plus the amount of the current waiver. If you submit waivers for a vendor that was not utilized, meaning that was not part of the original compliance plan, we request a justification. Now, if you have a vendor on the compliance plan that was not utilized, we also request a justification as to why not. We also match the vendors that we receive waivers for, whether or not they are in LCP tracker and the other way around. We check all the vendors that are for which we have payrolls and for the ones that we have received waivers for to make sure there is a complete match as long as they are certified. We review the payroll summaries that are generated by the LCP tracker. What do we check for? Making sure that whatever was the commitment, which are the EEO categories, those are commitments. The prime commits to specific percentages. We validate the CRO hours. We validate the local residency hours. Make sure that if the local residency percentage for the contract was 7.5, make sure that you met that. If the CRO is always 50%, make sure that it was met. If there's any shortfalls either on the MWD attainments, meaning you didn't meet your 25 and your 5, or you didn't meet your 50%, your 7.5, or whatever your EO commitments were, if they are below, we send you a preliminary letter with the schedules that we compiled and say, hey, Mr. Prime, we reconciled, we did the audit, here's the results. You got 10 days to reply and explain to us why did you not or didn't you meet the goals. We receive and we review, we assess the correspondence as we call good faith efforts. If everything that you say matches what we find out from the user department, or if it's because you were missing a specific number of payrolls or you are missing waivers, we compile, we receive, and we compile and we reassess. And at that point, we issue a final letter and something that we call the IOC. It's an inner office communication, basically that is from us, from our office, to the user department saying, based on the information that you provided and the vendor provided, all goals have been met. This project is now closed. If we happen to find that you did not have enough spending on either your M, your W, your D, or your B, then said, okay, the vendor or the prime did not or failed to meet the goal M, whichever goal it was, because each goal is treated individually, the M, the W, the D, or the V. Therefore, the following liquidated damages have to be withheld from the final payment. The same for the EEO, that means the Equal Employment Opportunity, or for the CRO, Chicago Residence Ordinance, or for the project area requirement. And that is how we close a contract. Are there any questions? I believe, Jackie, you take over from here.
Yes, I do. And we didn't have anyone queue up any questions before now, but I will ask the participants at this time if you would like to ask a question to our speaker regarding this presentation. Feel free to do so in the Q&A panel. Go to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You should see Q&A. Once you see the Q&A panel, go ahead and type in your question, press the enter key, and it should go to all of us. You should leave it on everyone so everybody knows what the question is and our panelists can answer it. Give me just a second. I think we may have gotten a question or two. The question was why a supplier only receives 60% participation, especially if the contract is a supply-based commodity contract.
A supplier normally, because of the nature of the business, they do not create the item that they are selling. They are just storing it, so they don't get a full percentage.
And there was a quick question asking if it's not so much for you, Gabe, as it is for me. They were asking if the participants have access to the recording. Yes, Rodney sent out a link in YouTube, and I will ask that Rodney resend that information so people know where to get the PowerPoint from and where you can get the recording from. And I believe Rodney just did that. If there are any additional questions, feel free to send them on down now. If there are no additional questions, I will say, Gabe, thank you so much for imparting that great information off
Thank you.
to us. And I want to also thank our participants for spending just a little bit of their time today to come to this particular workshop to find out a little bit more about Compliance 101, the things that you need to know uh, about compliance in the Department of Procurement Service. With that said, I don't see any additional questions at this time. So I will just say, stay safe, stay well, wash your hands, social distance, make sure you're wearing your mask. And I always say, get your vaccine when it is your turn, but I think it's all of our turn right now because there is no more turns people have to take. You can do, I saw today where you can even walk in and get your vaccine. So once we are all vaccinated and it is good in Chicago and in Illinois, we can all convene once again in City Hall. So with that said, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you at another one of these presentations. Thank you,
Thank you,
Gabe,
everybody. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Rodney.
and thank you, Rodney, too. See you later.